Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are in the process of kicking off our Hacktoberfest celebration for Refactor Tech. And we have with us Brandon Roberts, who has been a huge supporter of everything we've done for Refactor Tech and also is a big name in the open source community. For those of you who may not already know him, I'm really excited to introduce you all to Brandon. Brandon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the warm intro. Yes, like I said, I'm always happy to see Refactor Tech happening. But yeah, my name is Brandon Roberts. I give the usual spiel. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon T Roberts. I tweet out gifs. I talk about sports. I block people sometimes, but it's all in fun for the most part. Yeah, I am an open source maintainer. I work on a couple of projects these days. I guess we'll get into those, but yeah, I've been in the open source community for a while. I work at OpenSoft as engineering lead. So we do a lot of open source there too. So right in my wheelhouse. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in open source.
Yeah, I got started. It's probably been at least 8 years ago now. But I got started. I wanted to get started in open source long before I actually started contributing. Just because I used back when I was like dabbling in Linux, open source days and things like that, just trying to understand how the system worked and everything, and not knowing much about like open source in general and how people kind of contributed their own time to those sort of projects and things. But my first real experience was with AngularJS back in the day. I got involved with Angular. Those AngularJS, they were kind of
The
transitioning to
original Angular.
yeah, the original Angular. They were going from AngularJS to Angular 2, which they called it at the time. And I was using AngularJS at work and we were migrating to the new stuff while it was still really early. So it was a really good opportunity for me to get involved in open source. So I started contributing to that community very early before it even went to the official Angular 2 version at the time. But yeah, I tried to just jump right in. I was hesitant to try to get into a new community because I don't know, it's like going to a new school. You don't know anybody. You have to work your way around. But the community was very welcoming to me. So that was how I initially got involved with contributing to open source through Angular, and that kind of jumps springboarded some other projects from there. But yeah, that was how I initially got started.
I love that. And what excites you about open source?
Yeah, there are a few things that excite me about open source. The collaboration is one of the biggest things because you get to just from being in open source, you get to meet a lot of people that you may not have get to involved with. I don't know that I would have maybe got a chance to know about Refactor Tech if it weren't for open source. Just being around and being visible in that way where other people can see you is a good thing. Like I said, collaboration. I like collaborating, bouncing ideas off other people and things, and naturally developers. That's a space that we can operate in there. Yeah, collaboration. There are other things that come along with if you get involved in open source. Like you can start speaking at conferences. You can go to meetups and things. Like I said, I've been able to like travel to conferences like across the world and things like that. It's definitely opened up a lot of opportunities for me that I think other people could take advantage of too, just by being out there and, like I said, being visible. So those connections and things that you make with people, I think are things that kind of outweigh what you contribute in code and things like that, because those things take time too. But like I said, I've met a lot of people that I wouldn't have got an opportunity to meet if it wasn't for getting involved in open source.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that a little bit because I would imagine you didn't know those possibilities when you first got started with back way back when with AngularJS. So,
hmm
like, how did you discover that?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, if I could go back in time, maybe I would have done things differently, but I didn't know about these opportunities. I didn't know that contributing to open source was a job for some people. I learned as I went when I initially got involved, or that, like I said, people get to work on open source for a living and things like that. It was more discovery for me as far as getting involved and then those opportunities opening up. Like I've gotten my past few jobs just because of contributing to open source. And yeah, those things are things I didn't know. I was working like I worked regular non-open source jobs before, like government work and things like that, which is fine work, but just having more access was something that really opened my eyes, at least as far as like I'm in the South and everything, and everybody talks about if you're not in like Silicon Valley, maybe you don't make as much impact there, but
I know the South has
yeah,
something to say.
yeah, that's definitely true, and I think open source and things like that help people build their own story in that way. And like I said, that was something that I learned along the way as far as these opportunities and how these opportunities and putting yourself out there can open up to new things. So better opportunities, if anything.
Very cool. Love that exploration process. So how do you select the projects that you want to get involved in?
Yeah, for me, like I said, I was using the project at work, and so that was seemed like a good fit to get involved pretty early on because it was still in progress and there was opportunity there to learn and become maybe more of an expert in a project because it was still moving along and you can learn the ins and outs of it maybe before I guess the big wave of everybody else comes along. That was naturally how I selected projects to work on. And I think that is more so true today because the projects that I work on today are things that I am like interested in or invested in, or some of the ones that I contribute to or have contributed to are projects that I came across along the way. Like I was working on something and I noticed a bug or noticed something maybe a little off in the documentation or something like that. Those are like, I call those the drive-by contributors in open source where it's not a project that I'm going to become a maintainer on or maybe stick around for a long time, but you go in, you drop a PR and then they thank you and then you go along your way. Yeah. Some of those are just kind of happenstance. And then in the ones that I've worked on across the years are ones that have been like personal or passion projects for me.
I love that. I love that open source gives you that possibility, that opportunity to work on something that you're really passionate about.
Mhm.
What are some tips and tricks you would have liked to have known as a beginner?
Yeah, tips and tricks, and we do this as even a part of my job at OpenSoft. Is we've talked about how do you know what communities are good to get into or projects that are how do you know which projects are taking contributions, things like that. I think as a beginner in open source, I think the biggest thing to get over is like the hurdle of like fear. Don't let that keep you from contributing if you think that people are going to review your code no matter what. That I think that's one tip I would say is do it anyway. You may think that people are going to review your code and say something about it, which some projects are like that, but there are a lot of projects out there that are very contributor friendly, I would say. And like I mentioned before about contributing to projects that you use at work or maybe that you've come across, I think that's a good way to dip into contributing to open source, whether it be through documentation or even opening issues. There are lots of things that you can contribute to, discussions and things that you can contribute to outside of code that help maintainers and help other people contribute into projects. As far as those tips, I would check out the things that you're working on, things that you depend on, and see if there's a way you can contribute to those projects. And then if you get to a place to where you see something that you would like to build, that's a good way too to you can start your own open source project even as a beginner. I know that a lot of people think that you have to be like a seasoned professional to do open source, but open source is available to anyone. I think whether you want to contribute to somebody else's thing or if you start your own project and put it up on GitHub, congratulations, you're contributing to open source now. Yeah, I would say not to look at it as a big hurdle and to look at it as like a project that you work on that happens to be out in the open. So those are a few of the ways I think people can get involved. And you can, based on projects that you come across, you'll maybe find people that are more willing to help you as a beginner and contribute to projects and things, even if it's not just theirs. Like Brian Douglas, who I work for, he's really big on opening up those opportunities for people to come into open source and get involved, regardless of where they came from and how they got started. So I think those are good opportunities to help others too.
Yeah, you mentioned this briefly, but what if there's someone who's not yet a seasoned engineer, or maybe there's someone who wants to contribute in another way other than coding? What are some of the different ways that folks can get involved in open source communities, even if they're not a seasoned engineer?
Mhm. Yeah, the easiest one people point to is documentation for the most part because you can read through documentation if you're trying to see how to set a project up, or if things are just unclear to you, you can open an issue to ask for some clarification on something, and that may turn into the documentation getting updated to be easier for the next person that comes along. So issues for documentation, even opening issues for maybe something that you found that may end up being a bug in the project is another way you can contribute. Discussions are contributions. Trying out the project itself is a contribution in a way because you're helping share your experience about it at least. And of course, if you want to contribute code, there's opportunities to do that also. But yeah, there's code, there's pull requests, like documentation, images, sharing, things like that. So a lot of different ways that you can contribute without actually having to contribute code to the project. I contributed a lot of to Angular before I even started contributing to the code base, just because I got into the issues. I was like reading all the issues that came through. I was answering questions, but I was not like an official person on the Angular team at that time. I actually ended up, because I was helping people in documentation and everything, they actually asked me to come on board to help with the Angular documentations.
Oh, that is so,
So yeah, those are different ways you can get involved in doing that. And that was like some of the ways that I got involved too.
that is awesome. So tell us a little bit more about what you're currently working on.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing as too many open source projects to work on, but like
Never that.
at OpenSoft, our project is open source, which is an insights platform into open source projects. So you can go and look through all the front end and everything and contribute to that also. But the main things that I've been working on over the past years is one of them is NGRX, which is a
Mm.
library for the Angular ecosystem that helps you manage state within your library. And that project is at least 8 years old at this point. So I've been a maintainer on that one for a long time and been able to grow a team on that project where it's not just me and my friend Mike Ryan. We're one of the main contributors in the beginning, but we've definitely grown the team since then. And I don't have to do as much of the lion's share of work on that one. But so that one's still out there. And then my, I guess my current passion project is a project called AnalogJS, which is a meta framework, which meta framework is a buzzword these days, but it's a framework built on top of Angular that's similar to like Next.js and Remix, those and Nux. There's a few just to name a few, but it allows you, it's more of an integration. It's a meta framework that it builds on top of the things that Angular does, but integrates more full stack into the library. If you want to really get up and running really quickly, let you put those pieces together to build out an application with Angular in that way. So I've been working on that one for probably going on 2 years. And yeah, it's come a long way since I started it. And I feel like it's definitely, like I said, it's a passion project. So I put a lot of time into it, but it was something that I wanted to see. It was one of those things they tell you to scratch your own itch. And that was how that one got
Mhm.
started and got where it is today.
Awesome. So we have this big audience that's getting started with Hacktoberfest, getting started with open source as a part of Hacktoberfest. How can folks learn more about your projects and what you're working on so they could possibly contribute?
Yeah, they can go to the website for AnalogJS is analogjs.org, and that has like documentation. We have a documentation website on there, and also you can find our GitHub repo from that website there. And I even today I don't like specifically mark things as good first issues, but I do mark issues as like accepting PRs. So if anybody wants to dive in and help with some of those issues and things like that. Those would be, like I said, opportunities to contribute there. NGRX is a bit more of a mature platform, but we do have like I said, documentation there that people can contribute to also. But yeah, one thing I did want to mention is that I've made it a practice on these projects to when people, if you come in and open an issue, to ask people if they want to submit a PR to solve that issue that they're having. And if they need help putting in a pull request, because there's like the hurdle of opening the issue. And then there's the next step of that. I don't know what to do. So I don't want the people, like, they don't want to take up the maintainer's time, but actually want them to, if they need help, to, if they can say that up front, that way we have a level set of thing where they are and trying to meet them where they are so that they can help get that full first pull request in or contribution and things. I think it definitely helps out to be, it's just more one of those welcoming things that I think people can do in open source in general to do that. But whether it be my project, there are plenty of projects out there that I think are projects in the Angular community or even others that contribute to. But like I said, those are the ones that I'm working on and that people can contribute to during Hacktoberfest or even after that. Don't contribute for Hacktoberfest and then disappear. Go and
Absolutely.
keep pushing it forward.
Yeah, but Hacktoberfest is really meant to be that kind of gateway,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of invitation to folks. So absolutely stick around.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. I learned so much. I've been involved with open source for quite a while myself,
Mhm.
and I still learned a ton from you, as I always do. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.